I don't feel well. It hurts.
Where does it hurt? Stay with me. Can anyone hear me? Call an ambulance.
Look what you made me do. Daniel stood over Elena's body on the marble floor of their luxury Toronto penthouse, his fist still clenched, blood on his designer shirt. 3 of Elena's front teeth lay scattered across the white floor like broken promises. Blood poured from Elena's mouth as she tried to breathe through the shock. Her hands covered her face, feeling the empty spaces where her teeth had been seconds ago. Look what you made me do, Daniel repeated, his voice mixing rage with panic. If you had just kept quiet, if you had been the wife you're supposed to be, none of this would have happened. Welcome to Stories by Tara. Before we begin this powerful story, drop a comment and let us know where you're watching from. Now, let's dive in. What happens when Daniel's rage explodes? Drop a like if you believe Elena deserves justice. Subscribe and turn on notifications because this story takes a shocking turn. Comment where you're watching from. 12 hours earlier, everything looked perfect. At least, that's what the world saw. Elena Chen, 32, stood before her bathroom mirror in their luxury penthouse, carefully applying makeup to cover the fading bruise on her left cheekbone. A gift from Daniel 3 days ago when she questioned why he came home at 3 in the morning. She was beautiful. Smooth skin, natural black hair in elegant waves, warm brown eyes that once sparkled but now held carefully hidden sadness. She had a business degree from the University of Toronto and had been a promising marketing director before Daniel convinced her to quit 2 years ago. A woman of your status doesn't need to work, he had said with that charming smile. Let me take care of you. Focus on our home, on supporting my career, on being the wife I need. And she believed him. She believed being Mrs. Daniel Foster, wife of the successful founder of Foster Digital Marketing, would be enough. But perfection was never enough for Daniel. The bruises started about a year after she quit her job. Small things at first. A shove here, a grab there. Always with an excuse. Then the bruises got bigger. The excuses stayed the same. Tonight was supposed to be different. They were attending the annual Toronto Business Excellence Awards. Daniel was receiving an award for Entrepreneur of the Year. As his wife, Elena was expected to look stunning, smile perfectly, and play her part. She had bought a beautiful emerald green gown, Daniel's favorite color. Looking in the mirror, she barely recognized herself. The makeup artist had covered the bruise perfectly. No one would know. No one ever knew. The ceremony was everything Daniel wanted. He networked with Toronto's business elite, posed for photographs, and delivered a gracious acceptance speech about hard work and the support of his beautiful wife. Elena stood beside him on stage, smiling with her perfect teeth. Inside, she felt hollow, like an actress playing a role she never auditioned for. After the ceremony, they mingled with other recipients. Elena made small talk with wives she barely knew. Daniel kept her isolated from forming real friendships. Your husband is so accomplished, one woman said. You must be so proud. I am, Elena replied automatically. It was the answer she had been trained to give. Then she saw someone who made her heart skip. Maya Rodriguez, her best friend from university, whom Elena hadn't seen in almost 3 years. Daniel had gradually cut Maya out of Elena's life, claiming she was a bad influence. Before Elena could decide whether to approach her, Maya saw her and walked over, her face lighting up. Elena. Oh my God, I've been trying to reach you for years. Maya embraced her tightly. Where have you been? I've been busy, Elena said, acutely aware that Daniel was watching, his jaw tight. Too busy for your best friend? Maya's eyes were concerned. She was sharp, now a successful lawyer at one of Toronto's top firms. Elena, are you okay? I'm fine. Really, just. Elena. Daniel's voice cut through their conversation like a knife. He appeared beside her, gripping her elbow too tightly. We need to leave. I have an early meeting tomorrow. In the car ride home, the silence was suffocating. Elena knew she had done something wrong. With Daniel, it could be anything. So you were planning to embarrass me? Daniel finally said as they pulled into their building's parking, his voice dangerously quiet. What? Daniel, I don't. With that woman Maya. You were planning to what? Tell her lies about me. No. Daniel. She just came up to me. I haven't talked to her in years. Don't lie to me. His voice exploded. I saw how you looked at her. What did you tell her? Nothing. I told her nothing. They entered the penthouse and Elena immediately headed for the stairs, hoping to escape. But his hand shot out and grabbed her arm, spinning her around. Where do you think you're going? I'm talking to you. Daniel, please. I'm tired. You're tired. His laugh was bitter. You're tired? I'm the one who worked for years to build this business, to give you this life. And you can't even pay attention when I'm talking to you. I am paying attention. That's when he hit her the first time. An open-handed slap that snapped her head to the side and brought tears instantly. You think you're better than me, don't you? Daniel grabbed her by the throat. Not quite choking, but close enough to terrify. You think because you went to university, because your family has money, that you're above being my wife? Elena's family. He always brought them up when he wanted to hurt her. The Chens were old money. Her grandfather had been one of the first Asian developers in Toronto in the 60s, building an empire worth over $200 million. But Elena had hidden most of this from Daniel when they first met. She wanted to be loved for herself, not her family's money. It was only after they married that he realized he had married into serious wealth. And instead of being happy, he became resentful, insecure, violent. My family has nothing to do with this, Elena gasped. Your family has everything to do with this. Daniel shoved her away, and she stumbled into the living room. You think I don't hear the way your father talks to me? That's not true. Shut up. Diana's fist connected with her face. A closed fist punch that sent her sprawling onto the marble floor. Pain exploded through her jaw. She tasted blood immediately. Dazed, Elena tried to push herself up, but Daniel grabbed her by her hair and yanked her head back. You want to leave me, don't you? He hissed in her ear. You want to run back to your rich daddy. Well, let me tell you something. You're not going anywhere. You're mine. He released her hair and she fell forward. That's when she felt it. The sickening sensation of something loose in her mouth. She spit, and a tooth, her left front tooth, landed on the white marble in a small pool of blood. Elena stared at it in shock. Daniel's second punch knocked out 2 more teeth. Her right front tooth and the one beside it. The pain was unlike anything she had ever experienced. It wasn't just physical. It was the complete destruction of the last shred of dignity she had been clinging to. She lay on the cold floor, blood pooling around her face, 3 teeth scattered like broken promises, and listened to her husband blame her for his violence. Look what you made me do, Daniel screamed. Look what you made me do. Then, just as quickly as the rage came, it disappeared. Daniel's expression shifted to horror. Baby, Elena, I'm sorry. Oh God, I'm so sorry. He knelt beside her, trying to touch her face, but she flinched away. I didn't mean to. You made me so angry. Let me take you to the hospital. We'll say you fell. Through the blood and pain, something inside Elena clicked. A clarity she had never experienced before settled over her like cold, protective armor. She pushed Daniel's hands away and slowly stood up, her legs shaking. She walked to the bathroom, Daniel following, still apologizing, still making excuses, still blaming her. Elena looked at herself in the mirror. Blood covered her face and beautiful dress. Her mouth was a horror show. 3 front teeth gone, lips swollen and split, jaw already bruising. She looked like a victim. But as she stared at her reflection, she didn't feel like a victim. She felt something else. Something cold and clear and absolutely certain. Daniel had finally gone too far. He had marked her in a way that couldn't be hidden. He had destroyed her smile, and in doing so, he had destroyed the last chain that kept her silent. "Elena, baby, please say something," Daniel begged. "I'll get you the best dentist. Nobody has to know." She turned to face him, and something in her eyes made him step back. "Get out," she said quietly, her voice distorted but absolutely clear. "What?" "Get out of this bathroom. Elena, we need to. Now." Her scream was primal, filled with years of suppressed rage, and Daniel actually stumbled backward. He left. She heard him pacing in the bedroom, heard him on the phone, probably calling his mother, the people who always helped him justify his violence. Elena locked the door and sank to the floor. She cried. Not the silent tears she had trained herself to cry, but huge body-shaking sobs from somewhere deep inside. She cried for the woman she used to be. The confident business graduate. The rising marketing director. The daughter her parents had been proud of. She cried for the 6 years wasted on a man who saw her as property. And then, when the tears stopped, she made a decision. Daniel thought he had broken her. He thought knocking out her teeth was the ultimate act of control. He was wrong. Elena pulled out her phone, the one Daniel didn't know about, the secret phone she bought 2 months ago. She opened her email and sent one message to 3 people. Her father Richard Chen, her brother David Chen, and her old friend Maya Rodriguez, attorney at law. The message was simple. I'm ready. Tomorrow morning, begin protocol. She hit send. Then she carefully collected her 3 teeth from the living room floor and put them in a plastic bag. Evidence. She took out the camera she had hidden in the bookshelf 3 months ago and downloaded the video file to a secure cloud account. More evidence. Finally, she took dozens of photographs of her face, her missing teeth, the blood, the bruises. She documented everything with cold precision. Evidence. 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 Daniel thought tonight was the end of her resistance. He had no idea that tonight was the beginning of his complete destruction. Because what Daniel didn't know, what Elena had been hiding for 3 years, was that she wasn't just the daughter of a wealthy family. She was secretly the primary investor in Foster Digital Marketing, holding 60% ownership through a shell company her father had helped her create. She owned his company. She owned his assets. She owned his reputation. And tomorrow morning, she was going to take it all away. Elena didn't sleep. How could she? With her mouth throbbing, blood soaking through towels, and Daniel snoring peacefully like he hadn't just destroyed his wife's smile. At 5:47 in the morning, Elena sat in the guest bathroom and made phone calls that would change everything. The first call was to her father. Elena. Richard Chen's voice was alert. He had been waiting. Are you safe? He knocked out 3 of my teeth, Dad. Her voice was thick, distorted. She hadn't called him Dad in years. I have photos. I have video. And I'm ready to do what we discussed. There was silence. When her father spoke again, his voice was cold and controlled, the voice he used in boardrooms when destroying careers. I'm activating the legal team now. Your brother is working on the financial side. Can you get out safely? Daniel is still asleep. He thinks I'm broken. He thinks I'll stay quiet like I always do. Elena, listen carefully. I know you want revenge. But your safety comes first. I'm not running anymore, Dad. Today, he loses everything. Is Maya ready? She's been ready for 2 months. Ever since you first reached out. The paperwork is prepared, evidence files organized, and she's got the Crown Attorney's office on standby. But we need you out of that house before we start the nuclear option. Elena looked at her reflection. The swollen face. The missing teeth. The woman who looked nothing like the polished trophy wife from 12 hours ago. I'll be out in an hour. Start the countdown. At 6:30, Elena heard Daniel moving around. She stepped out of the bathroom. Daniel stood in the hallway wearing workout clothes, his face showing what looked like genuine remorse. For a moment, Elena almost felt sorry for him. He looked tired, haggard, older than his 37 years. Baby, he said softly, approaching with his hands raised. How are you feeling? I've been thinking all night. I'm going to my parents' house, Elena interrupted, her voice flat. Daniel's expression shifted immediately. Not to anger, but to panic. What? No, baby. We need to talk about this. There's nothing to talk about. I'm going to see a dentist. I'm going to get medical attention. And I'm going to stay with my parents. Elena, please. Daniel grabbed her arm. Not violently, but desperately. Don't tell your family what happened. Your father will blow this out of proportion. She pulled her arm away. Daniel, you knocked out my teeth. How exactly would my father blow that out of proportion? It was an accident. You know I didn't mean. Save it. Elena walked past him toward the bedroom, pulling out a suitcase. I'll be back for my things later. Right now, I just need to leave. Daniel watched her pack with growing agitation. How long are you staying with them? I don't know. Elena, come on. A few days, right? Just until you calm down. She almost laughed. Rationally. As if there was anything rational about what he had done to her. I'll call you, she lied, zipping up her suitcase. Wait. Daniel pulled out his phone. Let me at least call Dr. Stevens. He's a cosmetic dentist. He can see you this morning, get you temporary teeth. I already have a dentist appointment. Another lie. Well, half a lie. She did have an appointment, but not with some friendly doctor who would cover up evidence. She was going to Toronto General Hospital emergency room, where every injury would be thoroughly documented and recorded in official medical records that could be subpoenaed. Daniel followed her to the front door, his agitation growing. Elena, please. I love you. I know I messed up, but we can fix this. We always fix things. She turned to face him one last time. We never fixed anything, Daniel. I just learned to pretend the breaking never happened. She walked out the door. The moment Elena's car pulled out, she made another call. It's done, she told Maya. I'm out. Start phase 1. Oh honey, phase 1 started 10 minutes ago, Maya replied. Check your email. At a red light, Elena opened her email. The subject line made her smile despite the pain. Ownership transfer of Foster Digital Marketing, emergency board meeting called. The email was from Rodriguez and Associates, sent to Daniel Foster at 6:15. It formally notified him that the majority shareholder of Foster Digital Marketing, 60% ownership, was calling an emergency board meeting for 9 o'clock to discuss significant concerns regarding management. The majority shareholder was listed as Chen Tech Holdings LLC. The shell company Elena's father had helped her create 3 years ago when Daniel first started his business. Daniel had been so desperate for startup capital back then that he had barely read the investment documents. He had signed everything Elena put in front of him, trusting his devoted wife completely. He had no idea that his wife, through her family's resources, had provided 80% of his startup capital. He thought it was all his money, his success, his company. He was about to learn the truth. At 7:45, Elena sat in the emergency room at Toronto General Hospital. The ER doctor, a middle-aged woman named Dr. Sarah Thompson, took one look at Elena's face and knew immediately what she was seeing. How did this happen? Dr. Thompson asked gently, already documenting the injuries with photographs. My husband punched me twice last night, around 11:30. No lies. No covering up. Just the truth. Have you filed a police report? Not yet, but I will. Dr. Thompson nodded approvingly. Good. I'm going to document everything here. The missing teeth, the lacerations, the facial bruising, the jaw trauma. These records can be used in court if you choose to press charges. I'm definitely pressing charges, Elena said. An hour later, with temporary dental work, official medical documentation, and a referral to a maxillofacial surgeon, Elena walked out with everything she needed. Her phone buzzed with a text from David. He just got the email. He's calling everyone, freaking out. It's beautiful. Phase 2 was about to begin. At 8:47, Daniel Foster sat in his home office, phone pressed to his ear, voice rising with each passing second. What do you mean Chen Tech Holdings owns 60% of my company? That's impossible. I own my company. His corporate attorney, Gerald Hopkins, delivered the bad news. Daniel, I've reviewed the documents. Chen Tech Holdings provided the majority of your startup capital 3 years ago. According to the shareholder agreement you signed, they have controlling interest. And they're calling an emergency board meeting this morning to remove you as CEO. This is insane. Who the hell is Chen Tech Holdings? That's the interesting part, Daniel. Chen Tech Holdings is owned by Chen Family Investments. As in Richard Chen, your father-in-law. The world tilted sideways. What? Your wife's family owns your company, Daniel. Or more specifically, your wife owns your company through her family's investment vehicle. And according to the notice we received, they're removing you from all operational control effective immediately. Daniel couldn't breathe. This wasn't possible. Elena was his wife. His property. She didn't own anything. She didn't have power. His phone buzzed with a new email. The subject line made his blood run cold. Notice of restraining order hearing, Ontario Superior Court. He opened it with shaking hands. Elena had filed for a temporary restraining order, scheduled for an emergency hearing at 11 that morning. The petition included photographs of her bloody face, her missing teeth, and detailed documentation of years of abuse. But worse, so much worse, was the attached affidavit from Dr. Sarah Thompson of Toronto General Hospital, officially documenting that Elena's injuries were consistent with assault and that Elena had stated she was the victim of domestic violence perpetrated by her husband, Daniel Foster. His phone rang again. This time it was his business partner, James. Daniel, what the hell is going on? I just got an email saying there's an emergency board meeting and you're being removed as CEO. And the Toronto Star just called asking for comment about domestic violence allegations. The room was spinning. This couldn't be happening. It was 9 in the morning. Less than 10 hours since he had hit Elena, and his entire life was crumbling. At 9 o'clock sharp, Daniel Foster walked into the conference room of Foster Digital Marketing and found himself facing the firing squad. 7 people sat around the conference table. 3 were board members he recognized, people he thought were loyal. The other 4 were strangers in expensive suits with cold professional expressions. At the head of the table sat Richard Chen, Elena's father, and apparently the man who actually owned his company. "Sit down, Daniel," Richard said, his voice calm but carrying absolute authority. Daniel remained standing. "What the hell is this? This is my company. You can't just sit down." Richard's voice didn't rise, but the command was unmistakable. Daniel sat. One of the attorneys, a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s, opened a leather portfolio. "Mr. Foster, my name is Angela Morrison, and I represent Chen Tech Holdings LLC. We are the majority shareholder of Foster Digital Marketing, holding 60% ownership. This emergency board meeting has been called to address serious concerns regarding company management." "This is insane," Daniel said weakly. "I built this company from nothing." "From $2.4 million in startup capital provided by Chen Tech Holdings," Angela interrupted smoothly. "Capital you received 3 years ago when your wife, acting on behalf of her family's investment firm, believed you were a trustworthy entrepreneur." She slid a document across the table. "This is the shareholder agreement you signed in 2021. Section 7, paragraph 3, clearly states that the majority shareholder has the right to remove any officer or director with or without cause." Daniel stared at the document. His signature was right there, bold and confident from 3 years ago. "The purpose of this meeting," Angela continued, "is to formally notify you that, effective immediately, you are removed from your position as CEO of Foster Digital Marketing. You are also removed from the board of directors. You will have no operational authority, no access to company accounts, and no decision-making power. You can't do this. Daniel slammed his hand on the table. I have clients, contracts, employees. Actually, we can, Richard spoke now, his voice deadly calm. And we are. You see, Daniel, when you beat my daughter last night, when you knocked out her teeth and left her bleeding on your floor, you didn't just cross a line as a husband. You crossed a line as a business owner whose company has a morality clause in its contracts. Another attorney slid more documents across the table. 3 of your major clients have already suspended their contracts. Hartman Financial, Riverside Medical Group, and the City of Toronto Procurement Department. That's approximately $4.7 million in annual revenue. Gone. Daniel felt sick. This is because of Elena. Because of a private domestic situation. Over the fact that you're a violent criminal. Richard's calm finally cracked, real anger blazing in his eyes. My daughter is in pain right now because of you. She lost 3 teeth, Daniel. Do you understand what you've done? It was an accident. Things got heated. Stop. Richard stood up. Despite being in his 60s, he radiated the kind of power that came from building empires and crushing competitors. I've listened to you make excuses for years. Every time Elena came to family dinner with a new bruise, you had an excuse. Richard walked around the table until he stood directly in front of Daniel. But last night, you went too far. And this morning, my daughter finally gave me permission to do what I should have done 3 years ago. Take away every single thing you've stolen from her. Stolen? I didn't steal anything. You stole 6 years of her life, Richard said quietly. You stole her confidence, her career, her smile. You stole the woman she was supposed to become. And you did it all while living in a penthouse she paid for, driving cars she financed, and running a company she owns. The penthouse? The cars? Angela smiled coldly. The penthouse is owned by Chen Properties LLC. The Mercedes you drive is registered to Chen Tech Holdings. In fact, Daniel, once we finish auditing your finances, I suspect we'll find that approximately 75% of your lifestyle has been subsidized by the Chen family, with your wife protecting your ego by never telling you. Daniel felt like he was falling into an abyss. She never told me. Because she loved you, Richard said, genuine sadness in his voice. Because she thought if she made herself small enough, if she hid her wealth and power, you would feel like the man you pretended to be. But you weren't man enough to love her without hitting her. So now you lose everything. At 11 o'clock, Daniel stood in Ontario Superior Court for the restraining order hearing. He had found a lawyer, a young guy fresh out of law school willing to take the case on short notice. But one look at the opposition told Daniel he was outgunned. Elena sat at the petitioner's table, surrounded by 4 attorneys from Rodriguez and Associates. She wore a conservative navy blue dress, minimal makeup, and when she turned to look at him, the temporary dental work couldn't hide the damage he had done. The judge, an older woman named Justice Catherine Walsh, reviewed the petition with a grim expression. Mr. Foster, I've looked at the evidence submitted by the petitioner. Photographs of her injuries. Medical records from Toronto General Hospital documenting 3 missing teeth and facial trauma. And a sworn affidavit stating you struck her multiple times. How do you respond to these allegations? Daniel's young lawyer stood nervously. Your Honor, my client maintains that the incident was. I'm asking Mr. Foster, counselor. Justice Walsh's voice was firm. Sir, did you strike your wife last night? All eyes turned to Daniel. The courtroom was packed. Reporters. Elena's family. Even some of his former employees. Daniel opened his mouth to deny it, to make excuses. But then he looked at her. Really looked at her. At the woman he had claimed to love while systematically destroying her. At the space where her beautiful smile used to be. Yes, he heard himself say. I hit her. The courtroom erupted. Justice Walsh banged her gavel. Mr. Foster, I'm granting a temporary restraining order. You are to stay at least 500 feet away from Ms. Chen, she deliberately used Elena's maiden name, at all times. You are prohibited from contacting her directly or indirectly. You are to vacate the marital residence immediately. Do you understand? That's my home. The words burst out before Daniel could stop them. Justice Walsh raised an eyebrow. Actually, according to the property records submitted this morning, the penthouse is owned by Chen Properties LLC. So no, Mr. Foster, it's not your home. You have until 5 o'clock today to collect your personal belongings under police supervision. She looked at Elena with something like respect. Ms. Chen, I'm sorry for what you've endured. I'm also referring this case to the Crown Attorney's Office for potential criminal charges. Aggravated assault causing permanent disfigurement is a serious felony in Ontario. Felony. Criminal charges. Prison. As the hearing concluded and Daniel stumbled out, he realized the full scope of what Elena had done. In less than 12 hours, she had taken his company, frozen his accounts, taken his home, destroyed his reputation, and set him up for criminal prosecution. All because he had underestimated her. He had beaten her until she lost her teeth. And she had made him lose everything. By noon, Daniel was sitting in a budget motel off Highway 401, surrounded by the few personal belongings police had allowed him to take. One suitcase of clothes. His laptop. A box of documents. Everything else belonged to the penthouse, which belonged to Chen Properties, which meant it belonged to Elena. He stared at his laptop screen, scrolling through the financial devastation. His business bank account. Frozen. His personal checking account. Frozen. His savings. Frozen. His credit cards. All declined. The only money he had was the $247 in cash in his wallet. His phone buzzed with a notification from LinkedIn. Your employment status at Foster Digital Marketing has been changed to former employee. Meanwhile, across town at the Four Seasons Hotel Toronto, Elena sat in a luxury suite paid for by her father, surrounded by her family and legal team. Despite the pain medication and temporary dental work, she felt more clear-headed than she had in years. The restraining order is just the beginning, Meyer explained, reviewing documents. The Crown Attorney's Office is fast-tracking the criminal case. With your medical records, the photographic evidence, and Daniel's own admission in court that he hit you, they're confident they can get an aggravated assault conviction. How much time could he get? Elena's mother, Patricia Chen, asked. She was elegant, in her early 60s, and had been crying all morning. In Ontario, aggravated assault causing permanent disfigurement carries a penalty of 1 to 20 years. Given Daniel's lack of prior criminal record, he'd probably get 5 to 7 years. Good, Patricia said fiercely. He deserves every single day. 3 weeks later, Daniel Richardson sat in the Toronto Detention Centre wearing an orange jumpsuit, waiting for his attorney. He had been denied bail after the prosecution argued he was a flight risk and a danger to Elena. His mother had initially refused to help, though she eventually softened enough to hire him a struggling criminal attorney named Kevin Walsh, who charged $10,000 for the case. Money his mother could barely afford. Daniel had lost 20 pounds. His face was gaunt, his eyes hollow. The confident, award-winning entrepreneur who had stood on stage 3 weeks ago was gone, replaced by a broken man. The worst part wasn't the jail itself. It was watching Elena thrive without him. She had given an interview to a national morning show that had gone viral. Sitting across from the host, her temporary dental work visible, her confidence radiating, she told her story with clarity and strength. For 6 years, I believed the lies he told me, Elena had said. That I was too sensitive. That I provoked him. That if I just tried harder to be a better wife, he would stop hurting me. But the truth is, nothing I did would have stopped him. Because abuse isn't about the victim's behavior. It's about the abuser's need for control. The host had asked the question everyone wanted to know. You come from a wealthy family. You're educated. Why didn't you leave sooner? Because money and education don't make you immune to abuse, Elena replied. Abusers are skilled at psychological manipulation. They isolate you from your support system. They make you doubt your own reality. And they convince you that leaving will be worse than staying. My ex-husband told me for years that no one would believe me, that I was nothing without him, that my family would blame me for ruining the marriage. I believed those lies until the night he knocked out my teeth. That was the moment I realized he was going to kill me if I didn't leave. So I left. And I discovered I had more power than he ever did. The interview had been shared millions of times. Elena had become a symbol of survivor strength, of wealthy women speaking out about abuse, of the importance of having your own resources. Meanwhile, Daniel had become the villain in a national conversation about domestic violence. Kevin Walsh arrived with bad news written all over his face. "The Crown is offering a plea deal," Kevin said, sliding papers across the table. "Plead guilty to 2 counts of aggravated assault. 7 years in prison, eligible for parole after 5. If you take it to trial and lose, you're looking at 15 to 20 years. Daniel stared at the papers. 7 years of my life. For what? For hitting my wife. You didn't just hit her, Daniel. You permanently disfigured her. You knocked out 3 teeth. That's serious bodily injury. And the prosecution has everything. Medical records, photos, videos, recordings of you threatening to kill her. Your own admission in court. You have no defense. What about her? What about the fact that she secretly owned my company? That she was lying to me for years about her family's money? Doesn't that count as provocation?" Kevin looked at him with barely disguised disgust. "No. Daniel. Your wife hiding assets to protect herself from your financial abuse is not legal provocation for you to beat her until her teeth fell out. In fact, her actions are textbook domestic violence survival strategy. She was preparing an escape route, which suggests she knew you were dangerous long before that night." Daniel slumped in his chair. "So what are you telling me? Take the plea." "I'm telling you that if we go to trial, the jury is going to see that photo of her bloody teeth on marble floor. They're going to hear recordings of you threatening her. They're going to see a successful, educated woman who had every resource to leave but was so psychologically controlled by you that it took losing her teeth to give her the courage. You will be convicted, and the sentence will be harsh. Take the plea. Do your time. Get therapy. Try to become a better person." 6 months after Daniel's sentencing, Elena stood in front of the mirror in her new townhouse in the Annex neighborhood. The townhouse was hers, not her family's, not shared with a man, but genuinely, completely hers. She had bought it with dividends from her shares in Chen Tech Solutions, formerly Foster Digital Marketing, which had doubled in value under David's leadership. But more importantly, today she was looking at something else in the mirror. Her new smile. The final dental surgery had been completed 2 weeks ago. 3 permanent implants had replaced the teeth Daniel had knocked out. The surgeon, Dr. Michelle Chen, had done exceptional work. The new teeth were perfect, strong, white, natural-looking. Elena smiled at her reflection, testing it out. For 6 months, she had worn temporary teeth that looked acceptable but felt foreign. Now, finally, her smile was her own again. Different from before, yes, but in some ways better. Because this smile represented survival, strength, the refusal to let violence define her forever. Her phone buzzed with a text from Maya. "You ready? Cars outside. Big day." Today was the official launch of the Elena Chen Foundation for Domestic Violence Survivors, a non-profit organization Elena had spent the past 6 months building with her family's resources and her own growing platform as a survivor advocate. The foundation's mission was simple but powerful: provide financial resources, legal support, and safe housing to domestic violence survivors who wanted to leave but lacked the means. Every woman deserved what Elena had: family money, good lawyers, safe places to stay. The foundation would be that safety net for women who had nowhere else to turn. The launch event was held at the Toronto History Museum, a beautiful venue. Over 400 people attended: donors, domestic violence advocates, survivors, journalists, and community leaders. Elena had debated whether to hold the event in the same city where Daniel had beaten her, but ultimately she decided that reclaiming the space was important. She refused to let anything remain tainted by his violence. As she took the stage for her keynote speech, she felt a moment of nervousness. But then she saw familiar faces in the audience. Her parents, her brother, Maya, and dozens of women who had reached out to her over the past months to share their own stories of survival. 6 months ago, Elena began, I stood in a different kind of room, a courtroom, and watched my abuser be sentenced to 7 years in prison. That was the day I got justice. But today is about something bigger than justice. Today is about hope. She gestured to the banner behind her, displaying the foundation's logo, a phoenix rising from flames. The Elena Chen Foundation exists because I had resources many survivors don't have. I had family money. I had connections. I had lawyers who could move quickly and decisively. But what about the single mother working 2 jobs who can't afford to miss a day of work to go to court? What about the immigrant woman who fears deportation if she reports her abuser? What about the teenager trapped in her parents' home with nowhere to go? They deserve the same chance at freedom that I got. The audience nodded, some wiping tears. This foundation will provide 3 things, Elena continued. First, emergency financial assistance. Money for security deposits on apartments, for temporary hotel stays, for filing legal paperwork. Second, legal support. Free attorneys who specialize in domestic violence cases and restraining orders. Third, a network of safe houses across Ontario where survivors can stay while they plan their next steps. She paused, her new smile visible and radiant. My abuser thought he broke me when he knocked out my teeth. But all he did was give me the final push I needed to reclaim my power. And now I'm using that power to help other women reclaim theirs. The applause was thunderous. After her speech, Elena spent 2 hours meeting with donors, survivors, and advocates. One conversation in particular stayed with her. A young woman in her mid-20s approached nervously. Miss Chin, my name is Sarah Williams. I saw your interview on TV, and it gave me the courage to leave my boyfriend 3 weeks ago. He'd been beating me for 2 years, but I thought I couldn't leave because we have a baby together and I don't make enough money to support us alone. But after hearing your story, I realized staying was going to get me killed. So I left. I'm staying with my sister right now, but I need help getting a restraining order and finding permanent housing. Elena immediately pulled out her phone. Maya, can you come here for a moment? Within 5 minutes, Sarah was connected with Maya's law firm for free legal representation and had an appointment to discuss emergency housing through the Foundation's new Safe House network. As Sarah walked away with tears of gratitude in her eyes, Elena felt a profound sense of purpose. This was why she had survived. Not just to escape Daniel, but to create a path for other women to escape too. 2 years after that night, Elena stood backstage at a national conference in Ottawa, adjusting the collar of her elegant burgundy suit. Her hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from the magnitude of what was about to happen. Tonight, she was receiving the Order of Canada for her work in domestic violence advocacy. The Elena Chen Foundation had grown beyond anything she had imagined. Operating in 8 provinces, helping over 2,000 women escape abusive situations, and changing laws in 3 provinces to make it easier for survivors to access emergency funds and legal protection. But more than the medal, more than the recognition, what mattered was the impact. 2,000 women who were alive, safe, and free because she had turned her pain into purpose. Miss Chin, you're on in 5 minutes, a production assistant said. Elena took a deep breath and looked at herself in the mirror one more time. Her smile was perfect now. The dental implants had fully integrated. No one would ever know she had lost 3 teeth unless she told them. But she always told them. Because those missing teeth were the catalyst for everything that came after. They were the moment she stopped accepting the unacceptable. Ready. Maya appeared beside her, now not just her attorney but the Foundation's general counsel and Elena's closest friend. Ready, Elena said. As she walked onto the stage to thunderous applause, she saw the audience. Survivors, advocates, politicians, dignitaries, Her parents sat in the front row, her mother crying happy tears. David was there with his wife and kids. And throughout the audience were faces she recognized. Women she had helped through the foundation, women who had shared their stories with her, women who had found their strength by watching her find hers. The Prime Minister stood at the podium, ready to present the medal. Elena Chen represents the best of Canada, the Prime Minister began. She could have taken her pain and hidden it. She could have used her privilege to quietly escape her abuser and move on with her life. Instead, she chose to use her voice, her resources, and her story to help thousands of other women find their own freedom. The Prime Minister paused, looking directly at Elena. But beyond the Foundation's work, Elena herself represents something powerful. The refusal to let violence have the last word. She shows us that survivors are not defined by what was done to them, but by what they choose to do next. And she chose to rise. As the Prime Minister placed the medal around her neck, Elena felt tears streaming down her face. Not tears of pain, but tears of profound gratitude for the journey she had survived. When it was her turn to speak, she approached the microphone and looked out at the sea of faces. 2 years ago, she began, I was lying on a marble floor with 3 teeth scattered around me, blood in my mouth, and my husband standing over me, blaming me for his violence. In that moment, I had a choice. Stay broken or break free. I chose freedom. The audience applauded, but Elena raised her hand gently. But here's what I want everyone to understand. I didn't escape because I was strong. I escaped because I finally realized I was going to die if I stayed. That's not strength. That's survival instinct. The strength came later. The strength came in deciding to document the abuse, to gather evidence, to reach out to people I thought I'd lost. The strength came in choosing to prosecute him, even when people told me I should just move on and be grateful I got out alive. She paused, her voice growing stronger. And the real strength, the kind that earned me this medal tonight, came when I decided that my story wouldn't end with, I survived. It would continue with, I helped others survive too. Because surviving isn't enough. We have to thrive. We have to rebuild. We have to show other women that life after abuse is not just possible, it's worth fighting for. Elena looked directly at a section of the audience where dozens of Foundation beneficiaries sat. Women of all ages, races, and backgrounds who had escaped their abusers with the Foundation's help. To every survivor watching this tonight, whether you're in this room or at home, your story matters. Your life matters. You deserve safety, respect, and love. Real love, not the counterfeit version abusers offer. And if you're still trapped, please know there are people ready to help you. You don't need millions of dollars or famous parents. You just need the courage to reach out. Call the National Domestic Violence Hotline. Reach out to local shelters. Contact the Elena Chen Foundation. We exist because I know what it's like to feel powerless. And I'm here to tell you, you have more power than you think. The standing ovation lasted 5 minutes. That same night, in a different kind of ceremony, Daniel Foster stood in a small chapel inside the correctional facility, attending his domestic violence offender program graduation. He had completed the program 18 months ago but continued to attend as a mentor to newer inmates. Prison had aged him. At 39, he looked 50. His hair was graying, his face lined with the weight of his choices. But his eyes were different now, no longer filled with arrogant certainty, but with the humble awareness of someone who had lost everything and was slowly learning why. After the ceremony, Daniel approached his therapist, Dr. Raymond Pierce. Doc, I saw an article today, Daniel said quietly. Elena got the Order of Canada for her foundation work. I saw that too, Dr. Pierce replied. How do you feel about it? Daniel had learned in therapy that this question wasn't rhetorical. The honest answer mattered. Proud, Daniel said, and he meant it. And ashamed. Proud because she took the worst thing I ever did to her and turned it into something that's helping thousands of women. Ashamed because I'm the reason she had to build that foundation in the first place. If I had been the husband she deserved, she'd be using her talents for something else. Instead, She's spending her life helping women escape men like me. Dr. Pierce nodded. That's good awareness, Daniel. You're understanding that your violence had ripple effects beyond just the immediate harm. But I want to ask you something else. What are you going to do with your remaining 3 years in here? And more importantly, what are you going to do when you get out? Daniel had thought about this question constantly. He would be released in 3 more years, at age 42, with a felony record, no business, no money, and a reputation as a domestic abuser. I don't know, Daniel admitted. I can't get my old life back. I can't undo what I did. But maybe I can do what you do. Work with other men who are where I was. Show them that the tough guy act, the need to control, the violence, it doesn't make you powerful. It makes you pathetic. Dr. Pierce smiled slightly. That's the first time I've heard you describe your former self as pathetic. Because that's what I was. I thought hitting my wife made me a man. But real men don't need to hurt people to feel strong. Real men don't need to tear down their partners to build themselves up. I wish someone had taught me that 20 years ago. You can teach it to others now, Dr. Pierce said. There are programs for formerly incarcerated men who want to work in violence prevention. It won't be glamorous and it won't pay well, but it would be real. And it would matter. Daniel nodded slowly. For the first time since his arrest, he felt something like hope. Not hope for getting his old life back. That life was gone forever, and it deserved to be. But hope that his future might have meaning beyond just serving time. Back in Toronto, Elena sat on the balcony of her townhouse, looking out at the city skyline. Maya sat beside her with 2 glasses of champagne. You did it, Maya said. You turned the worst night of your life into a movement that's changing thousands of lives. Elena took the champagne and smiled, that perfect hard-won smile that represented everything she'd survived and everything she'd become. No, she corrected gently. We did it. You, my family, every survivor who shared her story, every donor who believed in this work. We did it together. But you started it, Maya insisted. You were brave enough to leave, smart enough to plan, and strong enough to use your story to help others. Elena thought about that night 2 years ago. The blood. The teeth. The pain. The moment she decided she would rather die free than live controlled. He beat me until I lost my teeth, Elena said quietly. And I made him lose everything. But more importantly, I gained everything. My freedom, my voice, my purpose. And now 2,000 other women have gained theirs too. She raised her glass to the Toronto skyline, to the journey she'd survived, to the future she'd built. To surviving, Elena toasted. To thriving, Maya added. They clinked glasses as the city lights sparkled below them. A city where Elena had once been trapped, then broken, and now stood free, powerful, and unstoppable. Daniel Foster had tried to destroy her with violence. Instead, he had unknowingly set her free. And Elena Chan had risen from those ashes like the phoenix on her foundation's logo. Transformed, unbreakable, and more powerful than anyone who had tried to break her could ever imagine. The abuser got 7 years in prison. The survivor got the rest of her life. And she chose to spend it making sure no woman ever had to suffer alone the way she once had. That was the ultimate revenge. Not destroying him, though she had done that thoroughly, but building something so beautiful, so powerful, so meaningful from the wreckage of what he'd tried to destroy. She had lost 3 teeth. But she had gained herself. And in the end, that was everything. The end. If this story touched your heart, smash that like button and subscribe for more powerful stories. Drop a comment telling us where you're watching from and share this story with someone who needs to hear it. Remember, you are stronger than you think, and help is always available.